Good afternoon. It is Tuesday, November 8th. It is 5 o'clock. We have a full dais calling this meeting to order. We will be going into executive session to discuss the following three items. Item 2A, City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 to seek the advice of legal counsel regarding the law as it applies to sign regulations for digital billboards. Item 2B, City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 and .072 to seek the advice of legal counsel and discuss potential acquisition of real estate relating to the Simsboro Aquifer Water Treatment Plant, well field and transmission facilities project, and other real property. And item 2C, City Council shall convene into closed executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Section 551.071 to seek the advice of legal counsel regarding personnel matters involving the Texas Municipal Retirement System. It is 5:01 and we are in executive session. It is 6:22 and we are out of executive session. We are on item 3, take any necessary or appropriate action on matters posted for consideration in closed executive session. There will be no actions as a result of our executive session. So it is 6:23 and we are going to take a recess and start this meeting promptly at 6:30. We are in recess. Good evening. It is 6:30 on Tuesday, November 8th. It is a big day and there is a lot going on today. We have a full dais. I am calling this meeting to order. And the very first thing that we're going to do is our pledges. And we have Isaiah Villegas. Isaiah, come on up. And not to leave him standing there alone, Emily Ledesma. Emily, come up and stand by Isaiah. These two students, you have to turn around because we're going to talk about you and they want to see your smiley faces. You can stand next to each other. Yeah, there we go. All right. They are both in 4th grade. They both go to a meal, and you can tell by Emily's t-shirt that they are a part of the SWAT team. And the SWAT team is students with athletic talent. And they are leaders, and I'm told that they'll help lead exercises when they're in PE. They will read to kindergartners. They are grown-up 4th graders, but they have been a part of the SWAT team for 2 years. So we are so proud of these young people, and we're thankful that their families have brought them. We're thankful for their coach that encourages them to be leaders. It's their first time to be in council chambers. They're excited and a little bit nervous, and both of them, their favorite subject is math, and I told them that is the right answer. So I'm grateful. Always like folks that enjoy math. So if you will all stand with us, these young people will lead us in the pledges.
for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one in God, one and indivisible.
Did a great job. You guys turn around. Colin's going to take your picture. Let's give them a round of applause. All right, thank you very much. If you will remain standing, thank you. You guys can go stand back with your families. Someone else who does a great job is Chaplain Long, and he's here to give us our invocation tonight. Pastor Long, it's all yours.
Lord, as we come before you tonight, we come humbly, believing that you are present with us as we come in your name. And Lord, I just ask that you give the wisdom and knowledge and discernment and understanding that this council needs to make decisions tonight. Also, give them the ears to hear and eyes to see what you're saying. And Lord, we just thank you for them, each and every one. But we also pray for all the attendees tonight, especially those that are making presentations and that have a part to play in the program. Lord, we thank you for Bastrop, Texas. We thank you for the wonderful things that you've done and you're doing and you will do in Bastrop. We thank you that we can live and work and play here. We thank you that we can pray here. We thank you, Lord God, for being with us. We thank you for this meeting. We thank you for just life itself. Now, last of all, Lord, the nation has voted today. We pray for the returns that we will have good and godly men and women lead us in the years and days ahead. And it's in your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Long. You may all be seated. It is a very important and fun time of year. Many of us, some of us know that the bar was taken in July, and they have to wait a really long time. They find out in October, and many of you know that my son also was in the room with you taking the bar exam, and he found out when they accepted when he had passed the bar. It's a very big deal. We are very pleased that once again our favorite judge, Dugan, has agreed to swear in Ben Whitehead as an attorney and counselor at law. Mr. Borquez, would you like to say anything?
Certainly, Mayor, Council, thank you for this point of privilege. Ben Whitehead is a proud graduate of the University of Texas School of Law, and last year he came to our attention because the association that I'm with, the Texas City Attorneys Association, for the first time offered a scholarship in the form of waiving our registration fees to attend our conference. First time we'd ever done it, and of all the law schools in all the state, one law student applied. One law student got it. Immediately, this young man got my attention. So he came to our conference, we visited with him. Our law firm made him an offer to be a law clerk. He came with us last spring, learned a lot about cities, a lot about Bastrop. He took the bar, he passed, and is joining us as a lawyer with our firm. And so by taking the oath, he will be one of your newest assistant city attorneys. And we're pleased to have his wife Claire here and a couple of members of our staff.
Thank you so much. Congratulations. You can come forward, and Judge Dugan, the floor is yours.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor. First off, it seemed like just a few days ago that old lawyers like us took that bar exam, but we still remember how evil that test was. Number one. Number two, for the record, students with athletic talent. I was never a SWAT kid when I was in school, so I like those kids that are students with athletic training or talent. All right, Ben, if you'll raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Ben Whitehead,
I, Ben Whitehead,
do solemnly swear
that
I will support
I will support
the constitutions of the United States
the constitutions of the United States
and of this state,
and of this state,
that I will honestly demean myself
that I will honestly demean myself
in the practice of law,
in the practice of law,
that I will discharge my duties
that I will discharge my duties
to my clients
to my clients
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability,
and that I will conduct myself
and that I will conduct myself
with integrity
with integrity
and civility
and civility
in dealing and communicating
in dealing and communicating
with the court,
with the court
that's me, in all parties,
and all parties,
so help me God.
so help me God.
Congratulations, Ben. You bet. You bet. Oh. We need Alan in the photo. Come on. Well, you have a wonderful mentor and a wonderful, I guess, boss. Yeah, yeah. Congratulations, Judge. You bet. Let's do the paperwork.
Oh, I thought you were getting out your glasses so you could see where to sign. Guess you already have those on. There you go. Excellent. Congratulations. Happy for your family. That is a big, big accomplishment. Thank you, Judge Dugan. It's always great to see you.
Great seeing y'all. Y'all have a good meeting. My daughter passed her certification test today to be a child life specialist. So as much as I love you all dearly, I'm going to spend some time with my family.
Excellent. And you guys should not feel obligated to stay either. You're welcome. It's a public meeting, but you also may want to go celebrate, and you're welcome to that. And Ben, my son is Taylor Briggins, so the Schrader may have thrown you off, but I was like, when I didn't realize that you'd gone to UT, so you may know my son. Well, there you go. Small world. All right. So see, I'm telling the truth. There's proof that I really do have a son that no one ever sees, and he really did go to law school. Excellent. All right, Council, we are moving on to item 8A, which is the mayor's report. I have a couple things, Colin, before we get started. One thing, Council, it was in our weekly report, but it is such great news. I wanted to share it with everybody. Mango Languages has gone live with the library, and that is adaptive learning with native speaking audio. So you can learn Spanish. There's a number of different languages. It is free with your library card. It's super, super cool, and just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that that was an opportunity out there for them. I was at the Art Guild had some wonderful events this weekend. Several of us were at the Light Up the Pines on Friday night, and the Art Fest on Saturday was just outstanding, and congratulations to the whole team. I know that was a ton of work, and y'all should be really, really proud of yourself. I also attended the Free to Learn Saturday night with about the Rosenwall and Hopewell schools, and that was another excellent presentation. And I guess if you haven't voted, you got 20 minutes to get in line, but it should be an interesting evening. All right, Colin, we can go to the next page. With that, Council, we met not too long ago, so I only have a couple of things. I know that the signature had some pictures from the 4th Annual Women's Leadership Luncheon, but I wanted proof that Councilmember Lee and City Manager Carrillo and I were all there, and then there's also a great picture of Samai Lukumbe, who was one of the speakers, and Pastor Bernie Jackson, who works at the Family Crisis Center and also spoke. And a kind of a distant picture, but again, giving acknowledgement to our Assistant City Manager that did a great job emceeing that event. Halloween happened since we were here last, and I'm sorry, but this just cracked me up. That is a picture of my kids' house. Yes, we were a very scary place. I think we were at about 1,500 visitors that night. But hands down, one of the best costumes, and Councilmember Kirkland, I feel like if you were this age, you might have had this costume. This kid had on a t-shirt that said Arrow 404 costume not found. Is that not the best Halloween costume ever? And then, as always, because I know there are folks who keep an eye on me and make sure, that was a picture of me early voting on the very first day, as I always do. Colin, if you go to the next page, you'll see what I planned on doing from November 2nd to the 8th. I did all of those things, and I want to point out especially the Arbor Day. It was great that the rain held off, and the Arbor Day, that was also a memorial to Barbara Wolanski, was attended by a number of council members and a number of staff, and it was a very sweet event, and I appreciate all of those that were able to participate in that. Our next council meeting, we can go to the next page, Colin. Our next council meeting is not until December 13th, so yes, that's a really small font, and no, I don't expect you to read all of that. So there's just a couple of things that I want to talk about. This weekend on Friday is Veterans Day. The city offices will be closed, but that means car show. And a part of the car show is always dedicated to the veterans, and the Veterans Day event will be on the county courthouse grounds at 11 o'clock. The Heroes and Hot Rods car show will be going on. The awards will be at 3 p.m., and then the Red, White, and Blue Veterans Dinner will be that night. It is gobble kit time. Need for Feed always has the gobble kits, and you can drop them off at Community Gardens up on November 12th is their big collection day. And if you miss out on that and you want to help assemble kits, they'll be doing that on November 19th. And also on November 19th, and I've been with this family for a couple years now, but I want to recognize the fact that Lulabelle Sims will turn 100 years old on November 19th. And I have always gone to her family, and they've asked me to participate in that, and it's a very cool thing. And moving on in November, the tree lighting, the Wassail Fest, all of that fun stuff starts on November 26th. Only to be topped by the home tour and the lighted Christmas parade, which is December 10th. So a lot going on. My report was in the packet, and because I know that you can't read that one. It was really, really small. So that is all I have, and it's the week that we start on this side. Councilmember Lee.
Good evening, everyone. So I always think, oh, I didn't do nothing, but then I end up with 7 or 8 things I did. So I went to the library board meeting last night. I'm very happy to be on that board. It's a great group of volunteers. We have some lively discussion, lots of ideas and great plans. There's going to be an open house coming up soon, December 10th, and that's on a Saturday, so I can come. Very excited about that, and I plan on being there. I went to the Friday Light Up Lost Pines event. Friday evening after a 20th anniversary dinner that we were cordially invited to by a city attorney. So those were 2 things I had to do in one night on a Friday, and then Saturday I had 3 things to do. But I also went to the Former Street Opry. I attended Roscoe Bank's partnership celebration with Cornerstone at Community Gardens. And I showed up for Halloween at pickleball courts in costume, ready to play pickleball, only to find out I went the wrong day. So I was the only one in costume, but I did get my own private pickleball lesson. So that was the highlight of my last 2 weeks. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. If only there were photos. I'll have to ask around. Councilmember Plunkett.
Yeah, I'd like to congratulate the Art Guild for the great event they put on. Enjoyed that, and just wanted to make sure that everybody comes out for the car show. The Bastrop area cruisers do an amazing job putting that event on every single year. It gets better every year, and just wanted to thank them for bringing such a great event to town.
Yeah, it's a group of volunteers that do an excellent job, and they're at their 400, so there'll be lots of cars to look at this weekend. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
After Councilmember Lee, it feels like I slept all week. You know, I did go to the Art Fest on Friday night, and that was wonderful because I really wanted to go watch that pouring at night, so it was really cool. So other than that, I just have several meetings this week because we didn't have any last week. So that's it. Sorry, Cheryl, I can't keep up with you. You've got way too much going on. Oh, I did see one of the best costumes that you were talking about, little boy. It was a couple, and they each had a white shirt on that said ice, and it was ice, ice, and then they had a carrier with the baby, so it was ice, ice, baby. I was like, oh man, that's perfect. 2 T-shirts, and that's it.
That's awesome, awesome. Councilmember Crouch.
Yeah, I've had an uneventful 10 days or however long it's been. I just went trick-or-treating, so I got to see all the 1,500 people at your son-in-law's house, and it was very packed on Pecan Street.
So what was your costume? Do you want to share?
I was a council member with Councilmember Kirkland.
Hoodlums, that's what you're saying. All
Twiddly
right.
dee and twiddly dum.
Councilmember Kirkland?
Excellent. So I'll start with Halloween. So,
What were you dressed up as?
well, I was actually wearing the jacket that had the council person name on it. He was just sort of my, I don't know, my accompaniment, sidekick, yeah. But we went, or I gave out all the candy that we had on Main Street and then went over to Pecan to see what was going on there. And there were like 200 times more children there than there was on Main Street. And then Jimmy and I ended up for the evening on Judge Dugan's front porch, which is way better than in his courtroom, for instance. But it was fun as we sat there and helped him give out candy for a while. But I want to say thank you to all of the people in the community. I mean, you saw a lot of it on Pecan Street, but everywhere that they did it, because I know that those families probably committed, you know, low thousands of dollars to the show that they each put on. And I just want to say thank you because it's very meaningful to our entire community, county, city, kids everywhere. Thank you, thank you. I'm the liaison for the Cultural Arts Commission and the Parks Board, so I went to those meetings, went to the Farm Street Opry, the Light Up Lost Pines Art Center fundraiser, which was awesome, as everyone said. Went to the tree planting in memory of Barbara Wilansky in the park. Chamber Government Affairs meeting this morning, and then I'll be helping to judge the car show this weekend. There's many of us doing it. There's lots and lots of cars, so that's it. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, City Manager, we're on item AC. You have the floor.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, residents. We're going to start with big news, which is the Groundwater District put a moratorium in place on new permits. This does not affect our permit. We are moving toward the water treatment plant, and also, but it is to protect the Groundwater District, and they're likely going to be putting some new rules in place. So they're trying to get ahead of that. So that is important development news, however. So we talked about a solid waste survey. There is now a link on the city's homepage. The council was fixing to go out for RFP for solid waste providers. We stopped and asked the question, what do the residents really want? And so that is the purpose of the survey. Before we go out and do any serious endeavors, let's find out what the residents really want us to do and not do. Part of the hiring process when I got here was about the B3 code and the development community. And so I've met with several developers, and we started with an ad hoc group. It was 16 folks, all with similar stories. And so we continue to drill down into that group. I have asked them to organize a little bit better and have representation, across representation. And I will begin having regular meetings with this development group so that we can begin to ascertain some of the root causes for what they feel are issues within the development code itself. So I did promise either biweekly or monthly meetings as we begin to drill down. I suspect a good portion of it is process from what I've heard and also from talking to staff. And so I've spoken to many of you. We are having third-party assistance to work through the process in the development center. So it's going to be a two-prong approach, both from process and code. So hoping to have some substantive gains in the next couple of months that we can begin to share positive news with the community. ECAB information, so tonight you will talk about an extension to the ECAB. This is such a popular program. There is going to be some change in operational hours, but there's not going to be any interruption of service. So we want to continue to expand and utilize this service. This structure fire that I wanted to talk about really highlights the importance of smoke alarms. We had a fire at a local apartment complex, and there was an elderly female who was trapped. It was the result of a pot being left on the stove. But were it not for the alarm and somebody paying attention that the alarm was going off, we would have never been able to enter those premises and be able to not only save her, but likely save the structure in any further fire. So, reminder, please check on your elderly, and also please check on your smoke alarms. It is super important in a community such as ours. We've talked about the Veterans Day car show. I'm excited. It'll be my first one. Can't wait. Upcoming events. Wassail Fest and Small Business Saturday. Unfortunately, I will not be here for Wassail Fest, and I have heard that it is a great, but I will be in Jamaica, so I will wave to you from Jamaica and send you a postcard. Christmas tree lighting, November 26th, 6 o'clock. Please don't miss it. This next one, the Youth Advisory Council ribbon cutting. So you've seen this awesome mural. So we are finally going to do the ribbon cutting on November 18th. Weather permitting, we are hopeful. It seems like every time we're going to do this, we've got some weather issues. And we do have very heavy agendas coming up because we are only having one meeting in November and only one meeting in December. There are multiple upcoming agenda items, and I won't bore you with all of them. Some of the important ones are the surplus revenue, the focus advocacy as we continue to talk through the hotel. And I'm aware that I shared a calendar with you on Teams, and I've only had one question on Teams, so that tells me one of two things: you're all super proficient in, or I need to provide a training. And I think I'm going to send you a training in your email. So that's what I have.
All right, council, any questions for the city manager? All right, we are moving to item 8D, which is a proclamation of the City Council of the City of Bastrop and Bastrop County Commissioners recognizing November 11th as Veterans Day. I'll be reading this proclamation at the event on Saturday, but I do want to, it's a fairly short one, and I want to call a few things out. Whereas the Bastrop City Council and Bastrop County Commissioners Court come together on Veterans Day to pay tribute to the men and women who serve our great nation with distinction in the United States Armed Forces, both in peacetime and in war. On Veterans Day, Americans across this land thank our veterans for their service in the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, whether active duty, reserve, or National Guard. Whereas on Veterans Day, our community expresses our continuing sense of gratitude to the men and women who give so much in the defense of the freedoms we all enjoy. Whereas at this time of special recognition, local veterans organizations along with Bastrop area cruisers pay tribute to veterans by hosting the Veterans Day Classic Car Show, and the Red, White, and Blue Veterans of Bastrop County organization hosts a banquet to honor our veterans. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Bastrop County Commissioners Court and the Bastrop City Council hereby join together to honor all Bastrop County veterans and encourage our citizens to join in the celebration. If you are a veteran, would you please stand so we can recognize you? Trey, yes, there you go. Thank you for your service. All right, council, we don't have any work sessions or briefing. I'm on the top of page 3, but it is time for us to get our fourth quarterly report. I have a couple of items I want to go over, Colin, mainly to kind of give you a heads up. When we are done with the fourth quarterly report, we will move to items 13G, H, and I, so the folks in the organization don't have to spend the entire night with us. And I will also, council, let you know that on item 12A, that there is no need to revise the October 3rd meeting minutes, so that is pulled from the consent agenda. So we are on item 10A, receive presentation on the fiscal year 2022 fourth quarterly report. Ms. Gleason.
Yes, ma'am. Madam Mayor, City Council, City Manager. Glad to be standing before you to deliver the fiscal year 2022 fourth quarterly report. It's a labor of love for our staff to put together, so happy to present it to you. Wanted to start out with one of our management projects that is very exciting. We've been talking about downtown building lights to enhance our historic downtown. The community and several organizations have been talking about this project for over a decade now. I got some even more history last week on it. And so this quarter, we made some steps towards that project. Number one, we got our current electrical layout mapped with the help of BPNL in their bucket truck. So we are very thankful for that. Now that we have that electrical layout, we can understand what assets we have and what needs to be installed in order for us to be able to work with the building light specialists to move forward. We sent out a formalized survey, and we went ahead and just sent that formalized survey to Spring to Pine. We are hoping that the scope of the project parameters are much larger than that, but we really wanted to start with that core until we get a better quote from the two cooperative light specialists we're talking to. There are two leading light specialists in the state of Texas, Decor IQ, who is currently our provider for our holiday lights, and the Decor Group. So we have been meeting with both. They have similar products, but they have a few differences in how they're installed and what periods different pieces need to be replaced. Both of them, though, have the ability to affect the lumens to ensure we don't go against our dark skies initiatives. So the next big steps for us, we will continue to work that survey and expand our communications efforts to more blocks. That survey has been very helpful. We've received feedback from over half of the buildings in those two core blocks, and they've given us, we put a space for questions that we can make sure that we really dig into. That's going to be really helpful when we choose our lighting company because we really know what their priorities are. So we are happy to have that information. We're also going to be having some more face-to-face conversations with certain building owners. We have a lot of lessons learned from the easements through the Main Street Rehabilitation Project that I'm sure many of you remember. So we're going to be having those face-to-face conversations with many of our building owners. We also are going to be choosing our lighting company. From there, we are able to receive an electrical quote, and that is because the two different products have different electrical needs at different increments. And so once we know exactly where we need plugs, we'll be able to get a firm electrical quote. That firm electrical quote will allow us to finalize the lighting scope and how many blocks we can afford. From there, we'll obtain the easements and begin installation of both the electrical plugs and the lights. Next, I wanted to talk about the Main Street program. Last quarter was the first quarter that we were able to obtain this information. This is some great data that we get from our partnership with the Retail Coach. During the last quarter, we had 134,000 customers. You guys might remember a customer is a single person, and how many times they come downtown are the number of visits. So we had over 374,000 visits to the Main Street District during that time. Our building vacancy rate dropped 1 percentage point to 9%. We've had a lot of activity this quarter thus far, and so we're excited to see at the end of this quarter how our vacancy rate is looking. Also wanted to mention, just last week, our new trash/recycle bins were delivered. We were really thankful for that program through our current waste provider to help bring both recycling education and recycling to our downtown. So that is our little guy who is going to help promote our Recycling Downtown initiative. They are going to be placed next month during Texas Recycling Month, so we're excited to get those. For our businesses on Main Street, you guys know our old trash cans are rough. They have long past their lifespan, so we're really thankful to that partnership to get those new recycling and trash cans installed. I wanted to take a moment to point out the revenue from the Bastrop Convention and Exhibit Center. They nearly doubled revenue this year from last year. As you guys remember, we were still kind of coming out of COVID, but that fiscal year 2022 is the highest year we've had except for fiscal year 19, which is our banner year. But that surpasses all other years. And we are very thankful both to Ms. Kathy Danielson and Ben and Steve, who give excellent customer service, but also to our partnership with Visit Bastrop, who helps us sell and promote that convention center. And we think that the results have been outstanding. With that, our Visit Bastrop, I wanted to take a moment to recognize their incredible sales results this year. As you can see, their definites for non-Hyatt hotels and the convention center blew away their goal this year. And so that went a long way in helping us with that convention center revenue and also to support those hotels within the city limits with occupancy. So we're very thankful for their partnership and their hard work. Growth this quarter, as you can see, we had 24 new home construction permits that were submitted, 22 issued. Home remodeling, we had 10 that were submitted, 6 issued. New commercial construction, we had 2 that were submitted, 0 issued. Demolition, we have 2 submitted, 1 issued, and plats were 6 submitted, 4 issued. As always, on the right-hand side, we went ahead and we broke down why those that were not issued, for what reason. You'll see we have several that are in review, and those are meeting our review guidelines. But as I've mentioned before, this is a snapshot on that last day of the quarter, so it could have been turned in the day before or a few days before. So we always have some that are kind of in that in-between spot. We had 4 that were incomplete, meaning they were missing items. So we sent it back to the applicant and let them know exactly what we needed from them. We had 1 that required an additional process. So those were the ones that were not issued at that snapshot. We are working very hard with our new city manager. We are glad that she is here to review those processes for efficiency, to continue to provide excellent customer service not only to our community, but our development community as well. So we are excited to see the outcomes of that process review. So thankful that our cultural asset groups are here. We are also really proud of their year this year. All I have to say is wow. They have grown their visitor counts incredibly. We have seen them work so hard, not only individually, but also together to serve and to really leverage those partnerships and support each other. The museum this quarter did a really great presentation with the library on Delgado v. Bastrop Board of Education, which is a landmark case for desegregation of schools. We had the Opera House. Their youth academy is so popular, they had to add 2 additional classes. So we were excited to see that. The Arts Center also had a busy quarter. Their summer youth classes sold out, and so they are now in their fall classes, which include glass blowing. So that is a really great class to take. I would suggest everyone take some time to go over there and have fun doing some glass blowing in the silo. They also worked with Bastrop County Cares and allowed their facilities to be used for a clothing swap for our community, and partnered with the Art Institute on the Uvalid benefits. So they had a very busy quarter working with our partners. Any questions?
Council, any questions for Ms. Gleason? Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
I always have a question. I, hold on, I gotta change the page, figure out my, first I gotta put my glasses on.
It's a process.
This actually might be a question for Tracy. I noticed on how we finished up the budget, I was curious, and I probably know this, and you probably told me, but I didn't remember where the rodeo spent something and blew their budget last year. Can you refresh my memory?
The rodeo?
Rodeo.
On the rodeos?
Still in the hot funds. It's
Expenditures?
just utilities.
It doubled over our budget?
It's utilities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's really the only cost we have out there.
I guess. Thank you. My other question or my correction was on the Parks and Recreation Master Plan. It says that you'll bring it to the council in October. Just make sure if you want to maybe redline that it didn't come to council in October. Remember, it just got pulled.
Yes, I will. We are planning on bringing it for the December meeting, but I appreciate the
Okay, thank you.
update to that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Rogers. Anybody else? Great job. Thank you, Ms. Gleason. All right, council, as promised, we're moving to item 13G. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-111 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, awarding a community support service agreement for operating, marketing, and staffing a historical museum and visitor center and providing visitor center services to the Bastrop County Historical Society at a cost of $251,397, attached as Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents for the contract, providing for a repealing clause and establishing an effective date. Council, if you brought your budget with you to the meeting, it is on page 163.
Apologize, my face again. Candace had to leave with a personal emergency. So we are bringing back the contracts for our community assets as appropriated during the budget season. Their service deliverables did not change, so their contract will look exactly like last year's with updated budget amounts and dates.
Council, any questions? Anybody want to make a motion?
I move to approve.
I have a motion from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Crouch. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. We're moving on to item 13H. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-112 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, awarding a community support service agreement for services associated with operating, marketing, and providing of cultural arts to the Lost Pines Art Center at a cost of $129,660 as attached as Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents for the contract, providing for a repealing clause and establishing an effective date. Ms. Gleason.
Same story. Their services agreement did not change, and this was the amount appropriated in the budget.
Council, any questions for Ms. Gleason?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Plunkett and a second from Councilmember Kirkland. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you, council. We're moving on to item 13I. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-113 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, award community support service agreement for services associated with operating, marketing, and providing of cultural art and theater services to the Bastrop Opera House at a cost of $147,818, attached as Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents for the contract, providing for a repealing clause and establishing an effective date. Ms. Gleason.
Again, no change as amount appropriated.
Councilmember Lee, you
Oh, sorry.
want to make a motion?
I make a motion to approve.
There we go.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Lee and a second from Councilmember Plunkett. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you. So I just, in reading through those three items, there's on page 101, for example, there's a statement that says actively participate with the City of Bastrop Main Street Advisory Board and Cultural Arts Commission to develop and foster a thriving cultural arts destination. I would like for the diversity board to be considered for these types of initiatives as well, or these types of boards as well, as far as partnering, because that is actually what diversity boards are for, especially when you're talking about bringing in diversity and culture and making sure you're hitting all demographics. So I just wanted to make note that going forward, and I know the board is newly formed and they're working out their work plan, and they've already got an initiative that they're starting on, but I do want to make sure that we're including them in those discussions and partnerships, because that's kind of what they were formed for.
Thank you, Councilmember Lee. And I also want to note to the public, and the reason I talked about the fact that it was on page 163 is that if you are tuning in for the first time, it looks like in a matter of seconds we spent over $500,000. And the reality is we had detailed workshops about it. We talked about the deliverables. We came back and had a second discussion about all of the money. So you're seeing the fruit of a lot of labor. I just want to clarify that a lot of work went into getting to where we are. But turns out, got to have the contracts and approving the budget's not the whole story, so we got to get everything taken care of. Council, that gets us back on page 3, and we're now on item 10B, receive presentation on development opportunities in Block 9 of Fairview Cemetery. Ms. Waldron.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So we have the Cemetery Advisory Board and myself, staff liaison, have been discussing Section 9 for quite a while now, but this last fiscal year, we've actually made some traction, and these are kind of the points what led us here. We've been monitoring how many plots that we have available to sell for a while, and we're getting a little low. I do want to point out Section K. We do have plots available in there, but that section is very hard to mark and it's just a very hard section. We don't have it open, but if we have to open it, we'll have to become creative until we can get Section 9 open. So we have had this undeveloped land that we've owned for a long time now, but for a long time we had plenty of lots. So, and we've also seen an increase in cremations, and it's a continuing increase that we've had, and so that's what kind of started the whole conversation of looking to do a columbarium. We actually do have a spreadsheet started already for people that are interested in a columbarium, so we're keeping those names and letting them know that we'll follow up with them once we get to that point. So just a little background, I do want to point out, we engaged Luck Design Team LLC. Brent Luck is in the audience with us, so he is available to also address any questions that you might have. I've also got several members of the Cemetery Advisory Board in the audience as well. So in December 2021, we engaged the architect, and he started meeting with the advisory board, asking questions, figuring out what they're looking for, did some preliminary survey and geo work out there just to determine the soil and things like that. So after several meetings, he did bring a final design. Plans were presented to the board, and here we are today. I'm bringing the recommendations of the board forward to City Council. So if you're not familiar with the location of Section 9, it is in the back. So I don't know if I can do this little thing. Oh, yeah, this is 95. So here's the pavilion. So this is section 9, way off in the corner. So this is the preliminary design that was presented, and this section, let's see, nope, I gotta do it right. This section right here is the recommendation of the columbarium. I have pictures in future slides. And then the layout of all the plots. So the road would be basically a horseshoe that would go up and around this section. And it was determined that placing the road that way would give us better location for people walking to the plots, and also just laying the water lines out there as well. So based on this design, it would give us our 480 niches with the columbariums out there and 668 plots that would be available to sell. So this is a mock-up of the columbarium units. There's a main one in the back, and then there's 2 wing columbariums on the side. And the design includes the plaza, the interior roads, the water lines, the trees, plot row markings, and the benches. This is quick math, but it's basically just trying to look at if we were selling the plots and the niches. I did play around with the prices a little bit because we were trying to get, we've been given these estimated costs of engineering and construction and the columbarium costs. And it was looking as though the columbarium niches were going to cost us around $1,000 each. So just kind of looking at what prices we would be needing to sell those for in order to make sure that we at least cover our costs for sure. So this estimate is looking at about $865,000 with 20% contingency to complete this section. Of course, I was just basing it on an average of what we sell each year. This puts us out 27 years of selling niches and plots. So I think that would set us up nicely for our future. So in order to move forward, we do need to engage an engineer to go ahead and actually complete the design of the roadway and where the plots will be. But this will also include talking about the bids for the columbariums, the bids for the construction. And so this is a multi-year plan. We also are talking about how do we pay for this. And I have suggested that we might be able to do a resolution for a borrowing from the general fund. So I will be bringing that back to y'all to get your approval if I get clear direction tonight that you would like for us to move forward with these steps. And then we also want, as we get closer to the columbariums, we'd like to do a communication push and maybe some pre-sales to kind of help this along. And I think that that's very feasible. It's very possible. That's all the presentation that I have.
If somebody is following along online, now all of her slides were in the packet. We're ending on page 26, it looks, or 28. So if you have questions about it, this information is very much readily available. And council, I'll remind you that this is under staff and board reports, so we won't be taking a vote. There's not a major action tonight, but this is the part where staff's saying, well, do you have any questions? Are you interested? Or because turns out she's got quite a few things to do, so happy to continue to work on it, but needing to know where council is on it. I have one super quick question, and then I'll go to Councilmember Kirkland. We've had conversations before on how much the plots were, and I know that there was a time that ours were priced so low that Austin, Big Bad Austin, was coming and buying up our plots. And so we raised prices, particularly for folks that weren't residents in Bastrop County, in the city of Bastrop and stuff. How much are niches going for these days?
Well, we still need to do some research on that. That's why none of these prices are set in stone.
Okay, because I heard you say, like, I played with the price to cover the cost, and I was immediate, like, well, covering the cost is one
I
thing,
was
but I want to
more
make
than covering
sure.
the cost with my price
Yeah.
that I had up there, but we do need to do some benchmarking.
So I would just say, for me personally, that would be one of the things that I would be looking at is, and would we also want to, on the niches, have a reduced rate if you're a city resident as opposed to others?
Yeah, there's several, the engineering contract has to come back, the resolution for the loan has to come back, any price changes would have to come back, so that, we'll be back in front of you, but this is really the first time we've actually had a conversation about kind of what the board's been working on.
And is there, and I apologize that because there may already be a policy for this, but if you own a cemetery plot, you can bury ashes in that plot, correct?
Yes.
So that is still an option.
Right.
And then, didn't you also tell me there's a stacking policy as well? But only 2 per plot?
Right.
All righty, just getting
have
all
to
my
have concrete
cemetery
bonding.
facts together. Okay, Councilmember Kirkland?
Yes. Tell me about the interfund loan. Presumably, it's a long-term loan paid back as you sell plots.
Yeah, that's part of what we kind of need to work out, but yes, it would basically be general fund cash that's available, would loan it to the cemetery fund, and there would be a payback period.
Okay, and that money in the general fund would come from the
Just available fund balance.
just available fund balance,
Yeah.
okay.
We've done one within the last 5-6 years from Bastrop Power and Light over to the general fund for the remodeling project of the city hall. And that's already been paid back to Bastrop Power and Light. We don't do it very often.
Council, this is the part where I want to recognize the folks. We have several folks in the audience that are on the cemetery board. Thank you very much for all of your hard work. We appreciate your dedication to the board. It's an important part of our community, and we appreciate your commitment to that. Council, is everyone in general agreement? Comments? Because Ms. Waldron's looking for nods or something. Councilmember Kirkland?
Yeah, so when I first joined council, I went to one of the cemetery board meetings and actually sat through some of the early presentations of this, and I thought it was a good idea then, and I continue to do so today.
Excellent. Anybody opposed? All right, good job. Thank you, Cemetery Board. I know your chair is here, Ms. Sanders. Is there anything you'd like to say to council? You. Excellent. She said that she had other board members here and she appreciate help and consideration because they can't hear you at home, Ms. Sanders. That's why I was repeating. All right, thank you guys for coming out, and happy election night. I see some of you already making for the doors, and I totally understand it. Great job, and thank you so much for having the information in the packet. It makes it a whole lot easier when we've had a chance to review things, so really good job. Thank you very much. All right, council, we're going on to citizen comments. And we have one person signed up for citizen comments, and that is Susan Smith. And she has a comment on item 13D. So what I may do is let her comment, and then we may go to item 13D. So Ms. Smith, if you'll state your name and address, you'll have 3 minutes.
Sure. Susan Smith, 1408B Chestnut Street, Bastrop. I'm here to talk about, give my support for the ECAB proposal that's in your packet. Visit Bastrop has had an outstanding experience with ECABs, as more importantly, our visitors and tourists and locals have had. We were part of the original federal grant where we offered some in-kind services in marketing and advertising. And since that time, we have strengthened those efforts with training to the hoteliers, all of the hoteliers. We've trained them. We've on a quarterly basis on how to instruct the guests and the visitors to use the QR code and how to get a ride and utilize the ride and the hours of the rides and all of that kind of thing. So it's been a really lovely benefit to the hotels. It's just one of those added things that they can offer. We've also had some really great success with meeting planners, as most recently was the Corvette invasion. They paid for 4 hours of the ECABs that was strictly for their attendees to be there and take them into downtown or within the radius of the ECABs to be able to experience Bastrop, and it was strictly for their attendees for that event. So this is something that we pitch on a regular basis to our meeting planners. So it's just a really outstanding way for Bastrop to be very unique, which is part of our pillars, our brand, and who we are, and to be uniquely Bastrop. So then to top it all off, last year we won 3rd place, Visit Bastrop did, 3rd place in the state of Texas for cooperative marketing through the ECABS effort. So we've put a lot into this. We really believe in it, and we hope that you will continue the contract.
Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Thank you.
Council,
Mayor,
yes.
may I ask a question?
Can you wait till we get to 13D?
I can.
Excellent. Madam Secretary, do we have anyone else signed up for citizen comments?
No, Mayor.
All right, we are done with citizen comments, and we are going to item 13D, consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-109 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, approving a contract with Electric Cab North America to provide transportation services in the amount not to exceed $117,910, attached in Exhibit B, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Ms. Gleason, hang on just a second. Councilmember Kirkland.
Miss. And Rebecca, I'll ask you the same question in a little bit.
Okay.
So how do you think we're doing on the supply and demand side for this? So for instance, do we have times when the ECAB's not available because it's being used based upon riders? I suspect Rebecca has real numbers. Susan, you probably have sort of people's feel or people's comments and feedback on it. At what point do we need a second one, I think, is kind of the nature of my question.
Sure. So we actually get a really detailed dashboard from ECABS. We work really closely with their CEO, Chris, and their operations manager. And so the way that the contract is written, the details are in the scope. That way, if council wants to change and add a second vehicle or add additional days, they can do so. And so we have those conversations directly with the people who are handling the operations. Mm-hmm. And so they're going to let us know, we're seeing these trends, this is what we're suggesting, these are what we think it's time for you to go back to council and suggest an addition or whatever it may be.
Right. So, Susan, the reason why I wanted to ask you is because I thought you might have anecdotal information on that. Like, is it your experience that people tell you that it's available when they call for it, that's?
Yes, and I agree with Assistant Manager Gleason in terms of when we will determine when the next one will be.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I think right now the presentation as it is a very good one. I would want to really keep a really close eye on it though, as we move forward. As it became more popular, I have heard comments that it's not available. I tried to get one and I couldn't. And I think those are just really good problems to have. So I think we're going to keep a really close eye on that together and see what happens.
Okay, thank you.
Great question, Councilmember Kirkland. Thank you for that. This is a time for folks that may not know that Bastrop was one of 6 pilot cities, and our ridership is higher than the other 5 cities put together. Wow. So people in Bastrop will ride these ECABs. And we are applying for another grant, and that too could impact our ability to add. So the Lone Star Clean Fuel Alliance, I know that there's some federal money out there, and we intend to go after all of it that we possibly can. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
Yes, ma'am. Reading through this contract, I see the certain days and certain times, but I was wondering if we would, like your Christmas events coming up, are we going to book more times when we have an event in town, like the car show? Are we going to book, can we book an extra car during certain periods
We absolutely can. So it's written in a way that we can be very flexible when we need additional help. They are great there for us to be able to utilize them for special events. I know Ms. Smith mentioned Corvette Invasion, so whether that's a group visit Bastrop's bringing in that would privately contract with them, or if it's for a city event, we've had those discussions about us being able to bring in shuttle services for our huge events like the Lost Pines Christmas Parade from parking lots. And that would actually be done on a separate contract if they give us a special rate for that. And so, but we could at any time go back and add additional hours or cars, and that would be done through council.
Okay, so my concern, maybe where Mayor Pro Tem Rogers is going, is it's November 8th, and we don't meet again till December 13th, and between now and then, there will be the Christmas tree lighting, Wassail Fest, the parade, the
Car
home
show.
tours. So if you do a special contract, does the city manager have the ability to do that up to a certain dollar amount? Because, like, you can't bring a contract back to us, or is this year just going to be a swing and a miss?
No, so this is just a small event-based contract, so it would just be those few dollars coming out of our special events budget that we already have appropriated for putting on the Christmas lighting or whatever it is. So
So
those,
do you
that
already
won't-
have that included, an additional cab?
That won't need to come back, that part won't need to come back to council, only if we're going to be providing like a regular service where, you know, we want to bring in a second cab for the summer months or
So
a
it
large
is,
duration.
there will be two during the Lost Pines Christmas stuff? That's already arranged?
So during certain times, we will have more cabs available. That will not be like a regular ongoing. It's not like for the month of December, we have a second cab. But for special events, we do have additional cabs planned to help get people from parking lots or from different places to the event. We always work with the county, we work with Film Alley, the convention center for parking lot shuttle type services. So we will have shuttle type services available.
So are those set up for Lost Pines this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I
I'm
know, I
sorry.
was gonna say,
Couldn't
are
get
you-
the
are
yes.
they-
I'm sorry,
are they
I was
booked or are they not
misunderstanding.
booked?
I
Or
was
are they-
misunderstanding.
Are they booked for this car show weekend?
This car show weekend, they are not.
Is there a reason why?
It was, so that would be, because it's not a city event, that would be something they would book through the Bastrop area cruisers. But
Okay, does the city not realize you're bringing 400 classic cars this weekend? I believe they do, right?
yes,
And the city knows they made a special permit, correct?
they do have a special
So
event.
the
for it.
city was aware that you're expecting thousands and thousands of people, right?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
maybe we should think that there's still a city event, not a event, but see what I'm saying?
Absolutely,
So, in the future.
sure.
Okay, I didn't see any of the lights. We've asked a million did you have a presentation, or do we want to? Okay.
Yeah.
You want to let her go,
I
or
can
you want to
wait
ask?
until you do.
Okay,
No, please. Okay.
she's waiting for you. Okay.
Sure. So that was a great introduction on the fact that in December 2019, we worked a partnership with the Lone Star Clean Fuel Alliance and eCabs for the pilot program through the Department of Energy. That was a 2-year program. And during that time, the use of eCabs just exploded. At the end of fiscal year 2022, for that year, we did close to 10,000 rides.
What's the y-axis on this chart?
Those are going to be number of riders versus quarters. You have the dark blue is fiscal year 21, and the light blue is fiscal year 22.
Yeah,
I
the
apologize, that
y-axis
didn't.
wasn't labeled, so that.
Yeah, I apologize. That didn't copy from the quarterly report. So this is to extend those services that currently end the last day of November. It will run from December 1st, 2022 to November 30th, 2023. With the help of the current data we have, we've come up with these days and times for the ECAP services. Again, those can be changed at any time. If we wanted to add additional hours, we could do that as well. They are very flexible. Special events, we spoke about city events and events that Visit Bastrop brings in. ECABS is currently conducting a survey, so it'd be very helpful if you would help them close out that Department of Energy grant. It closes on December 7th, and if you go to the City of Bastrop homepage, you'll see there's a banner for you to take that survey. They will also be at the December Chamber Luncheon, getting feedback there. So please help them. It should have a good showing for the Department of Energy. Madam Mayor mentioned that the Lone Star Clean Fuel Alliance continues to look at grants for us and things that we may be eligible for to get additional funding towards more vehicles. If any of our citizens or visitors are interested in riding, they can do so several ways. You can give them a call at that number. Typically, Bobby answers. He is wonderful. Very great customer service. You can also download the eCab app, which is Electric Cab Passenger. So if you see that little eCab symbol, you know you found the right one. And now they allow you to hail them. So you can, if you see them out in the community, you can give them a hail. They do have multiple passengers at any given time. So even if there's a passenger in the vehicle, you can give them a hail and they'll come and pick you up. This is one of my favorite pictures of Ms. Smith. So now that our obligations under the Department of Energy grant for promotion are complete, we are going to be working really heavily with Visit Bastrop for them to promote the use of ECABs for both our community and our visitors. So we're looking forward to hopefully continuing to expand ridership of the ECABs program.
Thank you. I'm really glad that you ended on this picture because one of the things that's included in the contract is the wrap, and that is done at no cost. And it seems to me that Visit Bastrop, and personally, I'd like it to, there's going to be the single cab. I'd like it to say Visit Bastrop, and if it's not saying Visit Bastrop, I think Visit Bastrop should be saying what it does say, since they're the main person that takes care of our HOT funds, and this is all being funded with HOT funds. So, you know, I guess we could take the angle of we could sell to the highest bidder for advertising, but I really like the idea of we're advertising the city. We're using HOT funds, and seeing the city's logo going between the hoteliers and between the parking lots seems like a really logical thing. Councilmember Lee?
So I just wanted for clarification, I think I've heard this before, but I needed a reminder. Why do we not offer daytime hours?
So carts run 7 to 7 Monday through Friday, and that is currently a $2 fee, but it turns out if you're 60 or older, you're a senior, so it's only a $1. If you are a senior, veteran, or disabled, it's a $1 ride. On the ECABs, the hours that we went with had the highest ridership.
Okay.
So it's all a cost-benefit analysis, and we pay for the carts contract. We don't cover all of those costs, but we participate with that, and they have a wider area that they cover, and the 7 to 7 Monday through Friday.
That's what I forgot about carts. That's why I was like, well, what do they do if they need groceries? So I forgot about carts. That's why I needed the reminder. So. Well, I don't know why I got so much joy out of reading this part of the packet. I think it's because I'm, been here since birth. I never, I think in my life, would have thought we needed a cab in Bastrop. But when I'm riding through town and I see them, I was like, oh, look at that little cab, that's so cute. So I think it's a wonderful thing. I never see one empty. I always see someone in them. They're being utilized. I'm just loving the fact that we have grown to a point where we need a cab in Bastrop.
Well, we've gotten some great marketing off of it. The Motor Trends did an article on it. Lone Star, there's a lot of people, and that gets Bastrop's name out there. So it's a good marketing tool for us. Councilmember Kirkland?
I'm about 70% sure these are free to people?
Absolutely.
Okay.
You can be 100% sure.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for,
The
boom, there it went, okay.
Yeah, the carts, it costs something,
Right.
but the ECABs are free.
So I just wanted to establish that. In high school, one time I had to ask, where's Cuba? Because it really mattered, and I got made fun of for that for the rest of my life. So I'll just give that to you for later. So anyway, when we did the Corvette invasion and we brought the ECAB in, we actually put a handwritten sign on the back that said, you know, free rides. As much as I know about our community being on council, it's not clear to me that this is free.
Good point.
Yeah.
Excellent point. I see Ms. Smith nodding her head. I bet we can
Yeah.
take care of something. And it, not only is it free, nobody's looking at your driver's license. It doesn't, anybody can hail. It's residents, it's visitors, anybody. Excellent point. Excellent point. Councilmember Crouch?
Well, I just wanted to go to the free part again. So it's not really free.
It's hot funds
Excuse me.
that are funding it.
No, yeah, I know that. But I thought there was a $1 or $2.
No, that's for
fee.
carts. That's the red van.
Okay,
But, so this one, when you use the ECAB app, it's free, and they always have been free. It was originally covered by a federal contract, a grant.
Yeah.
And now we're covering it with hot funds.
and that's where I went back and read the article when we first got them, and there was a mention in there that there was a $2 fee in that article, and so that's, I just.
But it
wanted
was
to
always
clarify that.
carts. And then what ended up happening with that, because it was confusing, and because for a while they shared the same app, and it was like, do you want to pick the carts and pay $2, or do you want to pick the cab and pay free? You know, so we knew how that was going. Carts ended up doing free for a while as well. So the prices have kind of changed a little bit, but the e-cabs have always been free to the riders.
Okay. Another question that I had was, there was a part of the note in here that said, City of Bastrop lacks access to rideshare apps such as Uber and Lyft. And I don't, is that accurate?
So people are in the community can absolutely become Uber or Lyft drivers. We just don't have people who choose to sign up. So last time I heard, I believe we have 2 in town, but it's very difficult to log on to any of those apps and actually have a car available, just because we really don't have very many people that choose to drive for those services.
Okay, because I know my family have taken Uber to the airport, and so I was kind of confused me as far as that the Bastrop lacks those apps. I think that's it.
Councilmember
Thank you.
Kirkland?
I've been on Main Street on weekend evenings, you know, Friday, Saturday night, and people sitting there that came to Bastrop telling me what a beautiful community this is, but it's 9 or 10 o'clock at night and they want to go home, and it's, you know, an hour and 15-minute wait for their Lyft to show up. So it is a thing. It's not so much that it's universally completely unavailable. It's just the demand is higher than the supply, so the service is not good. Which is the problem I'm trying to prevent by asking the question about
Right. I totally
utilization.
understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Which is also why it's awesome to live in Bastrop, and you can get the e-cab and go home that way. So, Councilmember Crouch? All right. Any other questions for Ms. Gleason or a motion? Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
I move to approve the contract.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers and a second from Councilmember Lee. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. All right, council, we're back on page 3. We're at the consent agenda. There's only one item, and we've pulled part of it out. So the item that we're considering for consent is consider action to approve city council meeting minutes from October 25th, 2022, regular meeting. Can I have a motion?
Motion to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Lee
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Plunkett. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. We're on the bottom of page 3. Items for individual consideration. Item 13A, consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-107 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop approving 2022 tax roll and tax levy, providing for repealing clause and providing for an effective date. Ms. Waldron.
Hello again. So, and actually I meant for this to be on consent, but it's not, so we'll talk about it. So we did receive the tax roll and levy from the tax assessor collector, and so the resolution is for $7,737,011, and this is what the tax roll that they are the official roll. The reason that this is different than what we have in our budget is because when we do our budget, we actually include a portion of the under protest, and they do not include that. The very first time I got this report from them, about panicked because our numbers are different. Well, there's a reason our numbers are different. And as the year goes on, those protests will get settled or new numbers will come in, and that roll will actually change. And so it's going to change over the next 6 to 12 months, and probably end up pretty close to where we budgeted. So this resolution is just to accept this tax levy and report.
Excellent explanation. Councilmember Plunkett?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Plunkett
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Kirkland. Is there any further discussion or questions? Madam Secretary, will you call the roll?
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Thank you. The motion passes unanimously. I don't know where she's going. All right, we're on the top of page 4. Consider action to approve the first reading of ordinance 2022-27 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, amending the budget for fiscal year 2023. Gee, feels like we just started. To address project carryover, fleet orders not received by the end of fiscal year 2022, and personnel reorganization in accordance with existing statutory requirements, appropriating the various amounts herein as attached in Exhibit A, repealing all prior ordinances and actions in conflict herewith, establishing an effective date, and move to include on the December 13th, 2022 City Council agenda for second reading. Ms. Waldron.
Yes, we did just approve fiscal 2023, but as every year, we always have carryovers, we always have adjustments, and so usually about this time, I'm coming to y'all with the First Amendment. So the financial management policy states that level of budgetary control is at the fund level. Y'all did give us a little more flexibility in our last approval of the policy, and we can actually transfer between departments up to $25,000. So, these amendments do require an ordinance approved by council. I can go through each one of these individually, or if anyone has specific questions for one of these are all, for the most part, carryovers for either projects that didn't get going in 22 and we needed to reappropriate for 23, or we do have a few reorganization amendments.
For those at home, we're on page 44 of the packet, and all of the slides were included in the packet.
Yes, so the first 3 amendments relate to just a position being moved from one department to another. And so that's just cleaning up those departments. Those transfers are over the $25,000, so it does require a budget amendment. Budget amendment number 4 is not any money involved, but we are changing FTE titles, and so just want to get that clear for our position controls. On budget amendment number 5, this is carrying over the CapCog corridor study. It was budgeted in 22, but it never actually got going, so now it's getting going, and we're moving that. I did have a correction. It should have been professional services. The account number was actually correct. And so we are taking $50,000 from available fund balance for the general fund amendments. And then the next several are all just fleet that was ordered and not received, so I've got to carry over that appropriation. We had asking for $50,000 more in contractual services for the cemetery fund. And a utility trailer I missed during the budget process, $7,500. And then the erosion repair that's actually going on right now at Hunter's Crossing. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Waldron. And council, we know that it wouldn't have been on the agenda and Ms. Waldron wouldn't be speaking with us unless the city manager had reviewed and approved all of this, correct?
That is correct, and I do want to talk about the personnel reorganization, and you will get an org chart when it's all settled. The personnel reorganization does not end in a net increase to the budget, it's actually a decrease. We did away with some proposed managerial positions in the budget, and we replaced them with operational people, and there were actually 2 positions that were already working in either temporary or contract. We made those permanent. And so we are left with some funds that we will be doing some temporary 1099 type staffing to fill in some gaps that we still have, obviously, but have been working with Tracy on potential salary savings throughout, because the goal is obviously never to increase the budget, much less in the same month you just approved the budget or shortly thereafter. So most of this is carryover. I think the new expense is the Fairview Cemetery. That's really the only new one.
Mm-hmm.
Which is actually what I was going to ask about. What was that increase for?
For engineering to get moving on the Section 9.
She was kind of assuming that we were going to nod yes on what we talked about earlier, and it hadn't been previously budgeted.
I was just appropriating more for that contract.
Oh, well, I guess what was the original budget? Oh, the original was just a budget. We weren't really sure. Were we not really sure?
We did not
On
have
the
estimates
contract?
at that time, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's coming out of their fund balance, so it's not touching the general fund yet.
Correct.
All those accounting rules about appropriations and getting everything in the right column. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
I move to approve.
We have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Lee. Once again, Ms. Waldron, just a great job of laying it out and making it clear, and appreciate all the information being there. It makes a big difference. Any further questions or comments? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Thank you, council. The motion passes unanimously. We're on item 13C. Consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-108 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, Texas, to award a grant administrative services contract to GrantWorks Incorporated for the preparation of the city's 2022-2023 CDBG grants, which is the Texas Community Block Grant, application and subsequent administrative services if funded as attached in Exhibit A, authorizing the city manager to execute all necessary documents, providing for a repealing clause, and establishing an effective date. Ms. Waldron.
First thing, it does say attached in Exhibit A. There is no Exhibit A, and so before this gets signed, we will remove that. There is no Exhibit A. And the body of the resolution doesn't talk about an Exhibit A, so just want to make that clear first. But we did see a grant opportunity, and part of the procurement process is that we have to go out for a grant administrator. We did that, scoring was done, and GrantWorks was selected, and so this is just appointing them as that administrative service provider for this funding cycle.
Councilmember Kirkland?
Move to approve.
I have a motion to approve from Councilmember Kirkland
Second.
and a second from Councilmember Plunkett. Is there any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Kirkland,
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Yes. All right, moving on to item 13E, consider action to approve resolution number R 2022-110 of the City Council of the City of Bastrop, authorizing the city manager to enter into an agreement with Kimley Horn Engineering to perform quiet zone corridor planning for the amount of $69,800 as shown in Exhibit A, including a severability and establishing an effective date. Mr. Job.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This is really just like it says description here. Essentially, this allows the city manager to enter into an agreement with Kimley Horn to do the appropriate stuff, understand what we need to do to establish a quiet zone along the railroad track. Roughly, a quiet zone has to be about 2,640 feet long. So was that half a mile? So we have about 2,800 feet that we'll propose. One, just let me remind you of this. This is a revised schedule. If you'll notice in your packet, it was actually, this document would have been executed in October. Now with it being executed in November, it pushes everything 30 more days. So I have a revised schedule here. It's pretty tough to see here, but wanted to bring it up. So as we go through this, what you see here circled in black is about 2,800 linear feet, right? So a little over half a mile. So that is where we would propose that you actually have the quiet zone. However, this study requires, and UP Railroad requires, that you review every crossing. And when you can see the difference, and this is also in your packet, I did mark this one differently on here because it's a private crossing, which is located there at the high school on what used to be Elm Street before it was abandoned. But there's roughly 12 crossings that are public, one that is private. They will review all of the crossings within the city limits, come up with a plan which includes project management, an expected cost for the overall improvements that are needed, and it includes coordination with the Federal Railroad Administration and Union Pacific. I did happen to reach out to the Federal Railroad Administration just to make sure working with UP was required. They said, yes, we need to inform them. We need to follow their process. I attached a copy of that email in the packet. And then this is just the crossing that we mentioned earlier. That is the private crossing. You'll notice there are no improvements here, but what we will do is develop a cost for any improvements that need to be made here. It's not necessarily we have to decide who pays for it today, but we do need to understand what those costs are going to be and what they're going to be for the entire improvements along all of the railroad. So that's really what we're here to do tonight, is get that approval, have the city manager execute that document when you're ready for the amount of $69,800. It's within budget, and which is on page 39 of your current budget book. With that, I'll take any questions.
Councilmember Kirkland?
Is Kimley Horn here today?
Kimley Horn is not here. Unfortunately, I think they're home with some sick children. I can tell you that they have some history of doing these. They've done a little over a dozen. More recently, Killeen, Cedar Park, and Waco.
Are you done? You look like you're thinking.
I'm not comfortable approving this without asking them some questions.
Happy to pass those questions on or answer them if I can.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers?
I was just curious, just so the people at home know, why is the city looking at, why are they doing this study or hiring someone to do a study? What is the city looking for on making the quiet zone? Why are we looking?
So there's been several conversations about this quiet zone in the past, starting in 2015. We have gotten to this point at least once or twice, but you'll notice the next item on the agenda is going to talk about a hotel that could be next door to the convention center. That is one of the requirements of our LOI. Our letter of intent is to establish a quiet zone. The city agreed that we would seek that out and understand what those costs would be and put something together. So that is one of the major reasons.
Thank you. I just wanted the public to know why we were looking into this, and it was so they understood.
Councilmember Crouch?
I had a question on the schedule. So on assumption said the overall schedule would take 18 months, and it seemed like a long time to do that, but I don't know if you can answer for them or if you can ask.
The conversations that I've had, I think there may be it may be generous a bit, but there's some hierarchy here. I believe it's, God and then the railroad, and they don't answer the phone very often. So there is some buffer in there to understand what that needs to look like. There is 12 months of just diagnostics and putting the plan together, and then there's actually implementation, which is why you're seeing such an extended schedule, I believe. So we're talking construction eventually as well in that overall schedule.
Oh, that includes construction?
Yes, sir.
In the year?
In 2025, no.
Yeah,
Yes.
but I think he thought you meant within the year.
No, there's almost a year of planning and design,
Okay.
right? then you would start construction, and there's some approval time in there as well from Union Pacific Railroad. Then you've got to notify the FRA, several steps along the way to get their blessing essentially, and then you start construction.
So Kimley Horn, just so I'm clear in my mind, Kimley Horn put this schedule together based on
Experience.
past experience that they've
Yes.
had in other areas,
Based
and
on-
that's where it's come from.
Yes.
This isn't a city saying you have to have this done by this date. This
No.
is Kimley Horn saying this is what this effort's going to take.
Correct.
That's
And
correct.
I wanted to address some questions. I'm aware of Councilmember Kirkland's concerns with the flow chart and the process and what is seemingly a very easy process in a flow chart. It appears that way, but there's some big red flags in the process. My bigger concern is the discussion of this as a private crossing, and I've had personal experience with a child losing their limbs on a railroad crossing, and I don't wish that on anybody, nor do I want that also on this career path. I've spoken to the superintendent at length on what a quiet zone would do for them and if this needed to be a quiet zone. It does not need to be a quiet zone for the hotel project to move forward. But I do want us to think about a partnership agreement in making this a safe crossing for the students. When something happens at the school, they don't care if it's the board or it's the city council. We're all, I mean, it's all of us. So as we go through the process, one of the things in the flow chart was all of the public crossings need to be safe. Well, yes, but there is a private crossing in there that bears some conversation, and then what do those improvements look like? And so I was comfortable moving forward with Kimley Horn because there's still a lot of unknown questions that need to be resolved. I don't want us to get down a path where we have a dual path with the hotel or some other development agreement, and there's an if-then statement that causes a fatal flaw where we can't move forward with the hotel. So while I understand your concerns, Councilmember Kirkland, I am very comfortable moving forward with the engineering contract.
Councilmember Kirkland?
Yeah, sure. So the nature of the questions that I would ask have to do with the content in the packet from UP. And UP lays out, they use the word opinion and other things, like it's their opinion that the city should install supplemental safety measures at 100% of crossings, even if those are not required to meet the requirements of the Federal Railway Administration to get a quiet zone, which could balloon the cost of this by, goodness, 10x, if not worse. They also say that they look at, they want to look at every crossing individually as opposed to taking it as an average of all of the crossings, which again is one of those things that, you know, one crossing all of a sudden then it blows the price up obscenely. And so since their approach is different than what is laid out by the Federal Railway Administration and frankly federal law, I'm just curious, based upon the experience of the consultant, you know, what is it that they're going to do? I mean, because if they plan to go down a path that brings us a path that costs, you know, $20 million for implementation, then we might as well save our 60 grand.
So I will give you a story just to, when we had this exact same conversation with Kimley Horn. We talked about the Federal Railroad Administration, how it seemed really very ministerial and super easy and average scores. And they told me the tale of Bryan, Texas. They were on a parallel path for 12 months, working and submitting only to the Federal Railroad Administration. The Federal Railroad Administration then said, we noticed you did not coordinate with your local Union Pacific Railroad. Please go back. And now they're doing a re-diagnostic instead of a pre-diagnostic. Kimley Horn is doing that for them. That is the experience that they had. I think, and again, while I'm suggesting we approve this, is we don't know what we don't know, right? So this really is truly funding that makes us make good decisions. And I think, I agree with what you're saying, it can absolutely be inflated, but I think there is some conversation to be had with the railroad. They don't get to dictate it, but they certainly get to have an opinion about it.
Oh,
and I think we also get to have an opinion about it.
Yeah, no,
and that's what, but this gets us started. That's all I'm saying.
It's logical that the railroad has an opinion. They have liabilities associated with this.
Sure.
And my first question was, so how many of these have you done? And you answered that question, right? And so that's meaningful. And that kind of experience means that they know what they're doing. They'll come up with good answers. So then, okay, based on you know what you're doing, how do you deal with this discrepancy between these two guides to do the same thing that say two different things that literally might reflect a 10x difference in final price? And so that was kind of my question for them, which would be, how do you navigate these, the federal law requirement that says, spreadsheet this and this number, if it's below this, then you qualify, versus the other one that says, you have to do that, but in addition, you have to install supplemental safety measures at 100% of your intersections.
Well, and I think all of those are going to end up being local discussions anyway. They can't force you to pay for something if you don't have the money. I mean, that's obviously the budgetary constraint. The crossing I think I'm most concerned of is the school crossing. Yes, I'm concerned with the quiet zone, and yes, we do need to address that, but I think there are additional safety issues through there. There's some timing of some arms and things that I want to make sure that we have appropriate because of our crossings and some of our accidents. So again, it's identifying what we don't even know, and nobody on staff is qualified to do that. So I would hate to put something like that on staff. We come up with what we think is a final answer and we move down a path. It fails, and or worse, somebody loses their life because we thought we were putting in adequate measures.
And I want to be clear that I do concur with hiring the consultant and spending the money. The question, though, is more about the process that they're going to follow, because if the process that they're going to follow perfectly matches the one that UP has laid out in their document, I have a significant concern that the price tag will be untenable. But if they could speak to that topic, meaning, yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. I'm also very well versed in the federal guidelines and the other document that you're referring to, and this is how they mix together, and this is how we handle that. And just the simple 7-sentence description of how they handle that discrepancy is what I'm looking for. And then I know the answer to, is this going to be so expensive in the end that we're not going to do it anyway?
Well, I think that the very fact that they've done Killeen, Cedar Park, and Waco, Kimley Horn's an engineering company, and so I would think it would be in their professional interest that if it is a $100 million price tag, it's going to be, you guys don't have a prayer. And if they were not able to navigate those waters, they wouldn't have been hired by multiple cities. So I think it's a little bit of hard to give you an engineering degree in a 2-minute presentation. That's why they're a professional engineering company that gets paid to do it.
I fully trust their credentials. The 10 to 12 times doing this means they're the right people. That's all wonderful. I just, there's two different descriptions of the process from the railroad and from the federal government, and they're different enough from each other that I wanted to hear how they navigate that difference. And then an answer, a reasonable middle-of-the-road answer would be like, okay, well, then let's do this. And that's the nature of my concern. I was just really hoping to satisfy.
And I think if this helps at all, I did ask a question similar to that.
Yeah.
And they really spoke on about the relationships they currently have at the railroad.
It probably helps a lot, yeah.
And I may be mistaken, but I am almost positive one of their employees is retired from the railroad, so they kind of know the ins and outs. And again, just so we're clear, we would only talk about the quiet area and not honking the horn here, right? So that may limit the requirements at the other crossings because UP in general just says, hey, if we're honking a horn, we feel that's the safest thing possible. And don't forget, we have improvements at all of those crossings already. So I could see where those would be some minimal improvements proposed there, maybe something larger at the school area where there's nothing. And then your real expense being in this black area, that black circle, but that's where they would not honk the horn. So there may be a bell requirement or something
So
like
for
that.
clarity for the public, the black circle, for lack of a better term, that's really what's tied to the hotel.
It's from
And
Farm
what
Street
the
to the
city
highway.
manager is pointing out is we're talking about railroad crossings. We have an awareness, private, public, school, no one cares. If someone gets hurt, we all go down. It happened to all of us. She's just saying we need to be aware of that. And maybe the school fund's part of that. Maybe it's done incrementally. Maybe you go after grants. But I'm understanding that it's important to you that even though it's outside of the area, that's a crossing that you want addressed.
Yes, I do want it addressed, yes.
You have to review them all, yes.
Councilmember Crouch?
Yeah, I still had it from before, I think. I had a question about the black circle as well, so I'm glad you clarified it. That's just for the hotel project, more or less. And I thought originally that we had to do all the yellow dots on the crossings that were within the city limits.
So that's what that pre-diagnostic meeting with UP establishes. We've done some of this previously, back in 2015. I do remember them being much heavier proposed here, pretty minimal here, but they did have an issue. They did take a lot of issue with no protection at the school at all. Again, we don't get pinged for that. It's not a public crossing, but they're certainly going to talk about it because that affects your score. Overall, and just so people who can't see the black circle, this is from Farm Street to the Highway 71. That's actually the area they're talking about not honking the horn and being a quiet zone. Any more questions?
So we wouldn't be responsible for the improvements to anything outside of the black circle then?
Well,
We don't know
that's what
that
we're going to
yet.
establish with this contract.
Yeah, and then part of the section from the Section 8 quiet zones, there's 2 locations in here that said, really, the way I took it was that no matter what you should find out in this survey or this diagnostic that Kimberly Horn's going to do is, one, there's still could be a minimum supplemental safety measures and alternative safety measures. So no matter what they find, they could add more things to whatever we already have in place. And also that the engineer can still, at his discretion, just blow the horn no matter what. So no matter what we do with this quiet zone, if he wants to blow the horn, he can blow the horn.
Correct. The engineer does have ultimate safety authority, so although it's a quiet zone, if there is an obstruction in the crossing, he's going to honk the horn.
Yeah,
So
so
the
I'm-
hotel cannot be guaranteed a 100% quiet zone. We just can't do that.
And
Yeah.
doesn't it have a 3-year? It's,
One.
it is 1 year at a time?
Well, it depends upon how you qualify. There's a
Residential
1 year, a
school.
3-year, 5-year, and it
Okay, I was
depends.
thinking that it was,
Yeah, yeah.
all right.
Yeah.
But the lowest one that you just barely squeak under is a 1 year,
Yeah.
but then you.
Makes
it's-
perfect
yeah.
sense.
And there are 4, I mean, the complexity to this is there are 4 pathways essentially that the Railroad Administration lays out, and I think we're in the last 2. I think Councilmember Kirkland and I are like, is it 3A or 3B? Which one is it? They all have this ancillary little triangle that says, work with your local representative.
UP.
At the end of the day, my experience has been the railroad doesn't listen to anybody. They cut through a FEMA berm, they cut through a flood protection mechanism and put an entire city downtown now in a floodway in my prior town. And we went through the seclusion process with FEMA, and in the end, the railroad won. So that has been my experience. I am not the one that wants to go up against the railroad, but I'm happy to hear what the engineers have to say on how we could potentially get through, not around any regulation, but through the regulations.
And so I guess another question is, if we're getting a quiet zone that could potentially or probably won't really be a quiet zone other than the fact that we're labeling it a quiet zone, what is that going to do to the hotel with our agreement with them? Does
What's
that
the
just help
basis
us?
of it's not really a quiet zone?
Well, because the 2 things I just pointed out, they can still blow their horn no matter what.
Well, that's the standard of the quiet zone, is that the
Yeah.
train engineer can blow the horn if there is something unsafe that he needs to call attention to.
Obstructing,
So I mean.
If there's a car across the track.
And
A quiet zone includes that by definition. I mean, I can see how a layperson might not understand that, but the technical definition of the quiet zone does include that.
I actually get Jimmy's point, because I don't care where you are in town, you're gonna hear the trains. So
Yeah.
what my question would be, is the hotel's expectations a certain decimal level? Because
That's what I was
that's-
going to ask.
Yeah, that's exact, I understand what you're asking.
Because if I can hear it all the way as soon as it
It's really
gets
not a
into the
quiet
picture
zone.
in the red line at the top of the page, I can hear it from my house as clear as a bell. Granted, it's not right outside the council chambers, but I can hear it all through town. And so is there a decibel level that the hotel is concerned with? Because you're still going to hear the train.
So
That's our next item. if
Sure,
you
that's
wanna-
our next item. But what I think is important here is we'll understand the cost for fixing every crossing, including the private crossing, and you can make that as long or as short as you want. The minimum's half a mile. I'm showing you that from Farm Street to the highway is over half a mile. I would suggest that's where you put it because it's compliant with what the hotel would like to see, and it's probably going to be the cheapest. And you still get the nostalgic feel of hearing the horn as people come through.
Yeah.
And
There's
you're right,
the
you can hear it from
nostalgic
everywhere.
whistle in the distance, and there's the rattle in the windows.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I
Yeah,
know.
that's too completely. And the hotel has paid a visit here. They know what they're up against. You cannot get away from the rattle of those rails and what it's going to do to hotel construction, especially when you look at the proposed layout. It is in very close proximity to the rail. I don't think they can ignore that, nor do I think we can meet any type of decibel level agreement because we have no control over the rail, other than providing for a potential zone where they wouldn't honk the horn automatically.
And the only thing in the LOI, what I recall, is that we would submit for a quiet zone.
And
So we've
then
met that burden.
Does the
Or will.
Kimley Horn overall price come down if they're just doing the black circle as compared to the entire?
So they have to do all of the work no matter what, and then put that together. Where you'll save money is when they actually come up with a construction cost, because they'll have some kind of engineering for that, and they'll only engineer however the distance we decide it to be, so. that
But
would
they
be
have to
your
do a
saving.
preliminary diagnostic of all
This
of
is to
it.
just get it,
No
to make
matter
it,
what.
Yeah.
this is giving us good information to make a good decision.
Yeah, because they had a minimal amount of time, like one day to come do the photos, and then there was a maximum of 2 meetings. So, I mean, it was very minimal for what I thought, what I read. And I know there's a lot of work that they're going to do in their office, but for the site visits and the meetings that they were going to have, it was just one day, 2 days of meetings, 2 days and 1 day for site visit.
It is minimal sites. It is minimal on-site work. I think the vast majority of the time here is a billable hour in trying to deal with the railroad, who,
exactly what it
again,
is.
answers to nobody but God.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Crouch. Councilmember Lee?
So just a couple of questions. How many crossings do not have any guards at all?
So all of them have some type of improvement, some are better than others. The only one that doesn't have let me rephrase that, let me show you this picture. The only one that has a gate that you can close by hand is the one that's the private crossing. The rest of them have signals and they have arms that drop down. You can enhance that by putting medians, advanced warning signs. You can put a bell on there that rings when you get close to it, which is at a much lower decimal rate than a train horn. Because there is a difference in hearing it off on one end of town and then walking in the morning and jumping out of your skin when they honk the horn right here at City Hall, right? The only real, I don't want to speak for what they're going to suggest, but everything has some type of improvement except what the school owns.
And my discussions with the superintendent, those gates are rarely ever closed, just because it bisects the school and the kids cross that sidewalk. They'd have to go pretty much all the way around to get away from that crossing, so he rarely closes that gate.
Yeah, and it closes to cars, not to kids.
Correct.
So that,
The pedestrians still
And
have it.
we've, the city manager and I were talking earlier today about kids and electric devices and earbuds in and, that horn not blowing at that intersection.
And that's a significant concern for me. Again, having lived it, personally lived it, I wouldn't want us to do a quiet zone at the school. The kids are engrossed in their cell phones, they're looking down, they're not paying attention. If it's only the lights that are going, trust me, half the time they're not paying attention to that. So, yes, I do want Kimley Horn to look at all of the crossings. I know this one is going to be an issue. I know there's going to be improvements we're going to have to do there. How much? How extensive, not sure at this point. And no, at a minimum, the arms and some improved lights.
Well, and that we as a collective, we,
Yes, we.
as the community of Bastrop with our partners. And it's fairly unusual for railroads to do a 90-degree turn. And that 90-degree turn right by the school really slows it down. And, and so that's part of what Kimley Horn will be taking a look at all of that. It's not in the middle of a 20-mile straight shot. So, Councilmember Lee, were you
One
done?
more
I think you had
question.
two questions.
is there any type of obligation we have to the community in terms of people that are nostalgic and don't want this to happen, or people that are afraid of safety, they have safety concerns? So what obligations do we have to the city in terms
At
of
some point, I
communicating?
think we would have a public hearing. Wouldn't you
We will.
recommend that, City Manager?
We'll have multiple.
Notifications?
So
Notifications?
yeah, we'll have public meetings, and some of those meetings that are in the proposal is for them to come and talk to the public. And certainly happy to put together a communication plan, and establish that and talk to the community.
And we could work with our partnership with BISD to get it out to parents and that kind of thing as well. I mean, we don't want to hear from them after we've made all the, we need to all get on the same page. Councilmember Kirkland?
Yes, so there's a few other options that are available within this whole program to help deal with the specific safety concerns at the school. One of them is that you can do a quiet zone at night only from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And so during the day, you would still have the train horn, you'd still have the nostalgic thing off in the distance sort of thing, and even, beating you up right next door at City Hall. But at nighttime, when people are sleeping, it could be turned off. That would help mitigate some of the safety concerns. I'm glad that they're going to study the whole thing instead of just the circled back area. I would have requested that. And there's also some engineered safety methods that are allowed, and then non-engineered safety methods. So one of the engineered ones is that they can put a horn on the crossing so that it still has the same decibel rating at that crossing, but it doesn't follow the train. It just is stuck at the crossing. And then another sort of safety measure is literally training, and it's a sort of thing where they would do educational training, or not they, but we, or the collective we would have to do safety training at the schools to talk about the changes, and those are some of the things that they talk about in the documentation. But those are some things that can help mitigate the safety concern, especially there, because it is very important.
I hope that those teenagers listen better than my teenagers, but that's a whole different meeting. Is there, I'm sorry, was that the end of your questions?
I'm finished now.
All right, council. Any other questions for Mr. Job? Thank you, Mr. Job, and thank you, City Manager. Your input's been extra helpful. Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Well, first, I appreciate all the comments that you made, John, and I believe we will know a lot more of these answers when we get these results of this. I mean, once we get the results from the engineers, then we can decide, okay, which ones do we want to fix, which ones we don't want to fix, and that way, then we move on to a public hearing to see if the public wants to spend that much money. But first step is this. Is that right? So I move to approve. Just can't move forward unless we take the first step.
Second.
I have a motion to approve from Mayor Pro Tem Rogers and a second from Councilmember Kirkland. Council, really appreciate the questions and the discussion. It's clear that everybody read the packet. It's clear we're all trying to do the right thing. Very, very much appreciate the conversation. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Kirkland.
Yes.
Councilmember Lee.
Yes.
Councilmember Plunkett.
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes unanimously. We are on 13F, which will be our last item for individual consideration. Consider action to approve the extension of a letter of intent between the City of Bastrop and Sunway Hospitality to establish a partnership towards the development of a 130 to 150 room hotel, update to the City of Bastrop Convention and Exhibit Center facade development and associated kitchen facilities, and support retail. Ms. Gleason.
Yes, Madam Mayor, City Council, I have with me here tonight our consultant, Mr. Joe Esch, on this project. I wanted to take a moment to kind of give us a reminder of where we got here. It goes back a bit of a ways before some of our council members were part of our team. So in 2015, we did a convention center assessment to find out how we could better utilize and really leverage that asset we have. And that came back and said what we were really lacking were two things: a DMO, which we are very thankful we now have, and a attached convention center hotel. In 2017, the city did a hotel feasibility project to see if that was in fact a feasible opportunity we should take advantage of. That feasibility study came back and said that absolutely would be a great opportunity for the city and the convention center, and as well as a hotel developer. In fiscal year 22, we had conversations during budget season to include it as one of our management projects for that year. So during that year, we came to council and we discussed several legal pathways which we could take to hopefully get to a convention center hotel with the help of our attorney as well as our consultant. And this was the path that city council chose. So we brought back several possible partners for review, and we put them up against our guiding principles that we had written to ensure which one would be the best fit to go forward and look into the pursuit of the hotel and do our due diligence with. I wanted to take a moment to go through those guiding principles. I am certain many of you will remember how often you saw me here at this podium repeating these guiding principles. Many of you could probably repeat them verbatim, but wanted to go over them again tonight. Our priorities around the Convention Hotel Center, the goal was to leverage our current public investment, which is our convention center, to increase the economic vitality of our entire downtown corridor. We wanted to develop a hotel that included all of those things that 2015 Convention Center review said that we were lacking, including commercial kitchen, small meeting space, as well as the hotel for hotel blocks for conferences. We just said, bless you, sir. We knew it was important that we had at least 120 keys. It was also very important to us that we had a major flag associated with the hotel, and that points for different hotel flags could be used within that hotel. We wanted to ensure that the operations, maintenance, and keep up of the hotel would not be placed as a burden on the city. We also wanted to make sure that the partner that we chose had a track record of success in these exact type of projects and had the financial capability to make sure that this came to fruition. We also wanted to hand off the management of the convention center, and that included both the maintenance and the repairs. It was also important to us. The convention center is used very heavily by the city and our local community, so we wanted to have an agreed number of uses guaranteed per year to ensure that we could still utilize it as necessary. Concerning council's 9 focus areas, we were especially concerned with the first, being fiscally responsible. It was important for us to minimize the amount of public financial participation in the project. We really wanted to ensure that we were working through that multimodal mobility. You know, we talk a lot about the public realm. We wanted to make sure that the space was walkable, that it could be used by our community, and also that we could connect it to all of the great things that we are doing in the spaces of carts and e-cabs, perhaps by a charging station or an area for them to park. It was also important to us that we were adequately managing growth. We knew that this would bring in additional traffic as well as possible drainage concerns, so we wanted to make sure that all of that was being looked at very carefully and that the project was being engineered to ensure minimum to no impact. So that brings us to this evening's letter of intention extent. I wanted to start by saying that our developer and their capital team are still very excited about this project. Our letter of intent has expired, and so they are requesting that we go ahead and extend it for an additional 90 days to make sure that we can come to a mutually beneficial agreement that suits both the city and the developer. The fiscal impact for fiscal year 23, the city did appropriate funds for the pursuit of this project, $200,000 of that is our part in the partnership for the pursuit costs, and we added an additional $150,000 for legal or other necessary financial services. It does not mean that we will spend all of that. That is what was appropriated in the budget. The goal is always to assign as little as possible while still doing our due diligence. Due to the nature of our guiding principles, the fact that we are putting a hotel in the middle of our historic downtown, we are very sensitive to its design and especially how it interacts with that public realm. So we have taken the partnership approach to determining that preliminary cost. We want to make sure that the design standards, that council are happy with them, council is happy with that interaction with the public realm. So all of that will be brought to council. We also wanted to really dig into ensure that we are meeting that goal of fiscal responsibility. So we have built into the timeline several go, no-go places where both sides can pull out of the agreement if necessary without going forward and spending additional funds. The next step is for us to bring that very detailed timeline to council for you guys to review. So that way you can see each one of those go, no-go places. That way you'll know going into the really serious negotiations exactly what the pathway will be forward. So if there are any questions, I have, again, our consultant, Mr. Joe Esch here.
Councilmember Crouch?
A question, when you mentioned a while ago that there was I didn't see a clause in here for them to pull out or us to pull out.
So a letter of intent is non-binding, so either party is able to leave negotiations at any time.
Okay, thank you.
So the fact that it's expired, this may be a question for Mr. Borquez, but can you extend something that's expired?
Mayor and council, my opinion is that this document, if you approve the city manager signing it, basically breathes new life into that letter of intent. I don't think you need to re-adopt that to extend it.
Thank you. And then my other question is, there's a lot of things happening in the next 90 days, and they involve offices being closed and people being occupied. Are we sure that 90 days is enough? Because we don't need to come back and extend it again in...
I would personally request 120 to 150 days for that very reason, and then we bump up against some other critical timeframes, but at a minimum, I would say 120 days. That gets us past the holiday month.
Okay. I personally think that's a better idea than just 90, knowing what we've all got on the calendar in the next 90 days. Councilmember Kirkland?
So I'm driving around with a shovel in the back of my truck to do a groundbreaking. And I'm kind of curious, what have we accomplished in the first LOI? Yeah.
In the first 90 days?
Yeah, in the first.
Good evening. We haven't met a couple of new council members since we started this process. So my name is Joe Esch, and I'm working with the city. The consultant first came out, has been working through the codes, making sure they were familiar with the design elements so that they're working with the city to ensure that the things they bring forward, they're not going to be in conflict. They did some test fits to see how the hotel should be connected, where the back of house should be, how that's going to work, how it relates to the streetscape, where they're going to be able to put the coffee shop, how the entertainment. So they've done some test fits along with it. They've also been spending time, their contractor that they are working with is Archcon, and so they've been working to get cost estimates initial. They're concerned with the increased costs that we've all been experiencing and seeing. Where does that sit? And so the market has been very busy with a lot of projects. That took a little longer for them to get some initial cost estimates. We've also been working with the city to make sure that the timing on the quiet zones, that all came together. We put together a draft schedule that's gone back and forth. There's been some transition to the city that has slowed down. There's been some responsiveness. So there's been a series of initial efforts to get us to this point. We worked with legal counsel and city staff to start laying out the agreements. So there's a framework that's being put in place. That's what's happened thus far. they're ready to move, they, being the hotelier, has been ready to move forward with initial design, start doing the schematic design. That's where we're at right now to kick that off. So we're to that point. That's what we've laid out.
All that stuff we can't see, right?
Yeah, it's the duck's feet underneath the water have been happening so far.
I think I would, city manager, appreciate updates. I don't know, once a, I don't know, 45 days or something, just about how it's going.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely.
And then if we go through this cycle and, you know, if.
This is the end of the cycle,
Yeah,
as
if
far
it's-
as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
and
if it's
that's
lukewarm
been-
at the end of this, we need to go
That's
out
right.
for,
That's been
you know.
my
Agreed.
discussion with staff is we've got some very critical information that's going to come out of this, and hopefully there will be no additional tax dollars other than what's already been appropriated in the HOT. And it's time to, fish or cut bait at the end of 120 days.
Yeah, great point, Councilmember Kirkland. I think with making the commitment with Kimley Horn on the quiet zone, like we've done everything we can do, so we need to come together and make a decision. Councilmember Crouch?
Who would own the schematic drawings? Mr. Esch? Has there been any conversation about that?
The schematic drawings, there has not, right now the contract would be between Kimley Horn and the hotelier. And there has not been one that anticipated the city owning the drawings.
Okay, so there are no drawings for it then?
Not yet. We haven't started that process. So
Okay.
when
I
we
thought
do
you
start
said-
that,
I thought you mentioned schematic drawings a few minutes ago.
I did. We're ready to kick off that. I apologize for being, if I'm confused you. We have gone through initial test layouts and some work on paper. There's not, the schematic design has not been done yet. Schematic design is the next step. Who owns that, to your question? The contract, the relationship between Kirksey and the hotelier is their contract. We have not solidified what rights we have to that if it goes away. So right now, it's been anticipated it was the hoteliers.
Okay, and I'm assuming that part of their soft cost would be the schematic drawings for that.
The
and-
total budget is about $800,000 to get them to construction drawings,
Yeah, okay,
or get to the point of the construction drawings.
yeah, thank you.
So the good news about that is that they've got money in the game and they're interested in getting this resolved as well.
They are, and then they have been, so far, all the costs that have been incurred at this point to do the test fits and everything else, they've been doing that on their dime, just as the city's been doing its own. So both parties have been proceeding on their own nickel without triggering that portion of it yet.
So my question would be, you came to the agenda with 90. We're suggesting 120. The city manager said 120 or 150. You've heard council saying it's the last time you get to ask. So is 120 the right number, or?
Frankly, I agree with the city manager with the holidays, and then we know how things get slowed down, and especially when you're also going to be starting with the quiet zones, and that is an important component to the hotelier. I would give deference to more time versus sitting at 90, because that gives you that flexibility to incorporate that in everybody's thinking process.
Does that mean 120 or 150?
If you do 150, I would do 150 and call it a day.
It's that puts us at the end of March.
That
Okay,
gives you
so
the end of March.
city manager's recommending 150.
Yes,
And I would
that
agree.
puts us at the end of the first quarter of the calendar year, and we've got some pretty big discussions that lead us into budget planning in April, so I'm comfortable.
It's a time frame.
Councilmember Kirkland?
Move to approve the extension of the letter of intent between the City of Bastrop and Sunway Hospitality for 150 days.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kirkland and a second from Councilmember Rogers that would extend the letter of intent to 150 days. Council, are you clear on what you're voting on? Any further discussion? Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Councilmember Kirkland,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Rogers,
Yes.
Councilmember Lee,
Yeah.
Councilmember Plunkett,
Yes.
Councilmember Crouch.
Yes.
Thank you, Council. The motion passes unanimously. It is 8:40. Councilmember Kirkland?
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion from Councilmember Kirkland.
Second.
And a second from Councilmember Plunkett. It is 8:40, and we can all go home and turn on the TV. It's going to be a long night. Be safe. We are adjourned.